Cellulose is a polymer of glucose. A polymer is made of many parts, or units. Polymers of glucose are known as polysaccharides. Polysaccharides are classified on the basis of their function. Cellulose is a structural polysaccharide. Structural polysaccharides provide support for an organism. Storage polysaccharides supply a way of storing glucose until it is needed. Both modern society and past history are affected by cellulose. The versatility of cellulose has presented society with many advances, both scientific and not. Without the application of the cellulose molecule, our world would be much different. Nitrocellulose, or gun cotton, was one of the first explosive organic molecules made by man. Cellulose's versatility contributed to the success of the photography business and movie industry. In the form of cotton, cellulose was responsible for the Industrial Revolution and American Civil War. In the 1830s, it was discovered that cellulose would dissolve in concentrated nitric acid and that this solution, when poured into water, formed a highly flammable and explosive white powder. Frederick Schonbein of Basel, Switzerland, was experimenting with nitric and sulfuric acids. After making a mess, he used his wife's cotton apron to mop up the spill. He hung the apron to dry above the stove. Moments after this, the apron exploded. Schonbein's gun cotton was nitrocellulose, the compound formed when the nitro group, NO2, replaces the H of OH. More nitration on the cellulose makes for a more explosive gun cotton. Schonbein established factories for his product, which became an alternative to gunpowder. However, many of his factories were accidentally destroyed because nitrocellulose can be extremely dangerous unless kept dry and handled carefully. Multiple errors caused him to run out of business.
Ready?
Oh! That was pretty impressive. So, I think that was quite a vigorous reaction.
Nitrocellulose, or gun cotton, is currently used as a mild explosive, a component in rockets, a component in propellants, a component in ink-based printers. Although Schonbein went out of business, his discovery continues to affect society today. Collodion is a nitrocellulose mixed with alcohol and water and was used extensively in early photography. The collodion process was an early photographic process invented in the 1850s that replaced the first practical photographic process. The wet collodion process produced a glass negative and a beautifully detailed print. It was preferred for the quality and effortless reproduction of the prints. The wet plate collodion process is going through a rebirth. It is used by people who set up and do images at Civil War reenactments. Many fine art photographers also work with collodion. The collodion process is more than 100 years old and allows society to hold on to a monumental artistic pastime. Celluloid is a nitrocellulose mixed with camphor, which is a waxy, flammable, white, or transparent solid. Celluloid was one of the first successful plastics. A thin, flexible sheet of celluloid coated with gelatin became a substitute for plates used in photography. Celluloid was originally used as film for moving pictures, and this attributed much of its success. Hollywood no longer uses celluloid film. Celluloid film was used for 120 years and was a vital component to the beginning of the film industry. Although digital projection is now the most common method for displaying new releases, celluloid is still an area of focus for art house cinemas intent on keeping traditional film alive. Lancashire, England became the center of the great industrial complex that grew up around cotton manufacture. In 1760, England imported 2.5 million pounds of raw cotton, and less than 80 years later, the country's cotton mills were processing more than 140 times that amount. Workers with technical skills were needed, and many jobs were produced. Machines were no longer powered by humans, industrializing England. The mechanical cotton gin, for example, separated the cotton fiber from the seeds and was run by animals or water wheels as opposed to humans. Workers were mistreated and labor unions were formed. Canals and railways were also built, industrializing the area as well. English Midlands were transformed from a farming district with many small trading centers into a region of hundreds of factory towns and villages. Cotton was able to thrive in Britain because it needs moist but well-drained soil and long hot summers. The demand for cheap cotton yams led to mechanical innovation, which mechanized Britain as a whole.
Cranes swing out over the docks of Manchester, great city of textiles, hauling out of the holds of ships big bales of raw cotton. Cotton from every continent, cotton for the spindles and looms of Lancashire, cotton for the yarn, which is exported all over the world. As fast as the raw cotton comes into the docks, packing cases of finished goods go out. This is a particularly important consignment of dresses on their way to South America. A fashion collection organized and created by the leading manufacturers and couturiers of Great Britain. A collection so representative has never before been collected even in peacetime, far less in war. The leading designers have excelled themselves in exploring the infinite possibilities of cotton fabrics. Science is producing new dress materials in cotton and cotton mixtures, and the hands of British designers are turning them into beautiful new styles. The finished qualities of the fabric are decided: texture, weight, appearance. All these things depend upon the machines and those who prepare the cotton for the looms. The machines are the latest engineering science can provide, and they are operated by descendants of families who have been spinning fine cotton since Crumpton first invented his spinning mule nearly 200 years ago. The mule, by the way, is still in use, for no better way of spinning the very finest of yarns has been invented. Bolton still exports such yarns to the rest of the world. Now let the looms of Lancashire tell their own story as they weave their symphony in cotton for the people of the world.
Cellulose is still used in the form of cotton. Cotton is a breathable textile still utilized for comfortable clothing. Aprons, bags, towels, napkins, bed linens, tablecloths, and clothing can all be made from cotton. Cotton not only helped industrialize society, but it led to the introduction of timeless products still used today. It can be assumed that the legendary era of the American Civil War would not have happened without cotton. At the time, cotton fabric was cheap and attractive, ideal for clothing and household furnishings. There was an increase in demand for raw cotton in Europe, and that led to an expansion of slavery in the U.S. Cotton cultivation was labor-intensive, and the slaves of the South dealt with many hardships. In 1860, raw cotton exports accounted for 2/3 of the total value of U.S. exports, and there were 4 million slaves. Cotton evoked one of the greatest crises in the history of the U.S. The social values of the South and North clashed, the South depending on slaves, and the North believing that it was wrong.
What made cotton so desirable? A perfect storm. In the 1790s, America's oldest crops, like tobacco, were depleting farmland and dropping in value. At the same time, the textile industry in Great Britain was exploding, creating enormous international demand for cotton clothing. Eli Whitney's gin merely provided the motor for a global economic machine, and slavery was its fuel.
Everybody was getting a piece of it. All these northern bankers and marketing people, folks who owned the ships that transported the cotton, everybody was getting a piece of the pie.
Cotton utterly transformed the United States, making fertile land from Georgia to Texas extraordinarily valuable.
northern states had gradually abolished or gotten rid of slavery, while it remained legal in the South. In the 1850s, the big question was what to do about all the land in the West when it was settled and carved up into new states. Northerners wanted territories in the West admitted as free states, while Southerners wanted them to become slave states.
The introduction of cotton led to the introduction of slavery within the U.S. Cotton contributed to the clash of ideals of the northern and southern states leading up to the American Civil War. This war helped maintain unity among the states and set a precedent against secession. The outcome of the war also led to an intolerance of slavery within the U.S.